Hi everybody, so I wanted to give a tutorial video for the lectors and for the extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion. Before I did, I wanted to mention our obligation to be at Mass every Sunday. It doesn't have to be at this parish, but at every Mass, and I say that particularly as you are ministers here at the Mass. So it's not as if we're working at the basketball game in the refreshment deal and you're on the schedule and you just show up. You know, we need to be at Mass every Sunday. Of course, that's part of our Catholic obligation to fulfill the third commandment. And when we fulfill the third commandment here at Mass on Sunday, we're celebrating the resurrection of the Lord. Okay, so I want you to be mindful of that. And I want to make mention too, I think a lot of people don't know, I mean, it's a serious issue in terms of grave sin, mortal sin. That if we're in that state that we should not be receiving the Eucharist, we certainly wouldn't want to be participating as ministers in the Mass. So just briefly, what are the three elements of grave sin? That it's a serious matter, we're aware that it's a serious matter, and that we use our own free will and we do it anyway. Okay, so I just want to make that mention to all of our ministers who are reading or being Eucharistic ministers, extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion. Okay, for our lectors, as you always do, you come up to the sanctuary steps and you bow. So one of my things I will tell you that might be a little different is that you come to the front of the altar here and bow before the altar. So when we come into church initially, we genuflect, and we're genuflecting to the tabernacle. Christ reposed in the tabernacle. Once Mass starts, the focus is the altar of sacrifice. So if you come to the middle of the sanctuary and bow, and then just move toward the ambo. So I'd encourage you when you come up to the ambo to kind of collect yourself here just for a second before you begin. So I'm going to give an example of a way that wouldn't be very helpful probably to do the reading. A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Galatians, brothers and sisters, to be free from Christ, to stand firm, and to not submit again to the yoke of slavery, the word of the Lord. Okay, so my point in that illustration there is that it's all blended together. There's actually three segments to the reading. One is the entrance, the introduction, which is a reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Galatians. There's a pause. Brothers and sisters, it is written that Abraham had two sons, and not to submit again to the yoke of slavery. The word of the Lord. So you can see the intro, the body of the scripture text, and then the ending. Also, I'd mention that to only read what's here in black. So we don't need to say, we're not adding anything like the first reading, the second reading. We know it's the first and the second. So just to read what's actually here on the page, which in this case would be a reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Galatians. So after your first reading, of course, you know that you're just going to step back, and you're going to step back here in the doorway, okay? And then you'll be waiting for the response to be finished, and then you'll come back into the ambo. And then again, I would encourage you just to pause a moment and then go through it again. The introduction, the body of the text, and then the closing. And also to remind you, when the deacon is not here, that you will be doing the petitions, okay? They'll either be up here on a paper sheet, or they might be in a green folder here at the ambo. Also to mention that when you leave the ambo, so you're going to go back down to the sanctuary floor, to the church floor, and again, you're going to go to the middle of the altar here and bow, and then you return to your seat. Okay, for the extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, one of the first things I want to mention is that we're going to start the cue for you to come up out of your pew would be after I consume from the chalice. Okay, so this will negate any walking around or anything, while I'm consuming here, if there's any, so there's no distraction for anybody else. So when I consume from the chalice, as I put the chalice down, that's your cue to come up. Now, also like the lectors, the readers, you're going to come to the middle of the sanctuary, right here in the middle of the altar. Okay, and again, as I mentioned before to the readers, that when we come into the church, we genuflect to Christ in the tabernacle. Once the Mass begins, the whole focus is on the altar of sacrifice. Okay, so you'll be at the middle, you'll bow, and then you'll head straight to the credence table. The credence table is right here, as you know, and you'll have the purification or the sanitation here. Take that, and then you'll just come over here and wait here on the side. So by that time, I will be communicating the servers. So by the time I get through the servers, the timing should be just about right. And you'll receive communion, and then I will hand you the paten. Okay, so I encourage you to receive the paten with 2 hands. Okay, and then you'll come down here to distribute Holy Communion. I may tell you I'll take the left or I'll take the right. I'm going to try to alternate every week if I remember what side I was on. Also, your first job is to know who might be in the back of church, someone that it would be a struggle or maybe an impossibility to really come forward for communion, but you would go straight to them first and then come back and join me with Holy Communion. Also, I know this was taught, I think, some time back, that the extraordinary minister of Holy Communion never gives a blessing. Okay, the move would be to take the host, and you could just, as if someone's coming up, and if they have their arms crossed, to say, God bless you. Just say that, God bless you, may God bless you. But there's no stretching in the hand, there's no touching. Even the deacon and I who are doing the can bless, we never touch, their hair, the shoulder, etc. Of course, for hygiene reasons. But you always see us, do the blessing or however the deacon might do that. But that is reserved for the ordained during Mass. I highly encourage you to bless your children, your spouses, etc. in your home. But for the Holy Mass, it would be the priest or the deacon. So when you're done distributing Holy Communion, whether I'm here or not, and just go ahead and set the paten on the altar. And I say set it on the altar, and sometimes you'll see me just put my hand like this, because that'll bypass any possibility of fumbling during the handoff here, so if you will. So you can just set it here, and yeah, and also too, before I forget, if you're distributing Holy Communion and the communion would fall or someone would drop it, just let me know. I'll be right there, and I'll pick it up and I'll take care of it. Okay? Also, so when you're done, you'll set the paten on the altar. You'll come over here, and this is the ablution bowl. So you'll just lift it up like this and just dip your tip of your fingers in there like that, and you can just dab it on the towel and you're done. Okay, so that time you'll just come here, you'll be facing the tabernacle, and then I will repose the Blessed Sacrament. You don't need to bow or genuflect, but then you will go down to the altar, to the middle here in front of the altar, and per usual, you'll just bow and then return to your seat. Okay, and in conclusion, I just want to thank you for stepping forward for your ministry. I hope that being a lector or an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion benefits your spiritual life. That it's also an inspiration for others, because this is what it is. This is what this is, a church, our community. We all have to come together and do our part, as it were, to participate in the Holy Mass. So again, thank you very much, and God bless.